If you're a reader of spiritual writers such as Theresa of Avila, St. John of the Cross, or Thomas Merton, or any of the other great spiritual writers, you'll hear them talk about the dark night of the soul. And the dark night of soul has to do with our relationship with the God that loves us. Life is a cycle. Just like the tides that come and go, ebb and flow, our prayer life does the same thing. Prayer life is a relationship with that God that loves us. And like any relationship, there are times when it gets rocky. There are times we don't always agree with another person in the relationship. There are times when we seem to be distant. And there are other times when we just are so much in love that we can't think about anything else. And the same thing happens with our relationship with the dear God that loves us. There are times in our life when God is so real to us and so there for us that we don't even think about it. We see his love everywhere around us, and we look at it and we talk to him like he is our best friend, which he should be. But then there's the flip side of the coin. There are that time in that relationship with the God that loves you, just like in times when you have a relationship with another person, that things aren't always just hunky-dory. There are times when God seems to be so distant that we ask whether he even exists. Where did he go in my life? Oh, I pray, I talk to him, but there's a sense of emptiness, a sense of darkness, a sense of not knowing where God is. And this is the time known as the dark night of the soul. And every one of us, no matter what stage our spiritual life may be, whether we're at the top of the echelon of good prayers, or we're just a beginning person learning how to pray and have a relationship with God. At some time during this relationship, you will be confronted with the dark night of the soul, if you take your spiritual life seriously. And at this time, this is the time when you are going to be tested the most in terms of whether or not your relationship with the God that loves you is real, and whether you will be faithful to him in that relationship. It's a time of loneliness, a time of being out of touch, you think, with the God that loves you. You can't find him anywhere in your life. Things to be going down the tubes in your spiritual life, as it were. But no, God is there. Think of a little seed. Before it does anything, it has to first be planted in the ground. And it's dark, and it's wet, and it's dingy, and nothing seems to be happening. But during that time, it's growing and developing. It's taking in nutriments from the soil and water, and it's actually developing, even though it's in the dark. And the same thing happens to us in our spiritual life. When we get into the point where we're in the dark night of the soul, we're developing perhaps better than we would if we were out of that stage of prayer. Because it's during this time we really do prove our love for the God that loves us. Because it's at this time when our faith is tested to the most. And you can say, well, I can't doubt God. It's a sin to doubt God. No, we all doubt God at some time, particularly in the dark night of the soul. But if we don't doubt, we'll never have a growth in faith. Because it's in these moments of doubt that we test the very depth of our relationship with the God that loves us. Yes, we do know that in this darkness, there will be an end at the light at the end of the tunnel, and that God is there. He's waiting for us, just like that little seed when it sticks its head for the first time above the ground and begins to become a flower and a fruit that's of beauty. And so when you get this relationship with the God that loves you, there'll be both sides to it. There'll be the ups and the downs. There'll be the ebbs and the flows. So when things get dark, don't give up. Take it as a time to become a better person in your spiritual life. Let God fill you in this darkness, which he will do with his love and his comfort, even though you can't feel it. God loves you more than you could ever know. He calls you into being at every moment. And if he didn't love you, you wouldn't even be here to experience the dark night of the soul. So when you are confronted with this moment in your prayer life, take it as an advantage to move on, to be a greater person, to make your spiritual life that much greater. Don't give up. Have faith. Trust in God, in his mercy, and know that he's there, even though you can't feel him, and he seems so distant. But God is never distant. It's on our side sometimes that the distance occurs. So, use the dark night of the soul to become a saint.